From terrifying celestial anomalies to unprecedented human activities, these anomalies have only been seen once in history. Up first is the Carrington Event. The Carrington Event was the single most powerful geomagnetic storm ever recorded in human history. Humanity had never experienced a solar flare before and hasn't since. The entire planet was bathed with energy which caused an aurora so bright you could read in the dead of night. This event was named after Richard Carrington, the astronomer who identified the flare, and occurred on the 1st of September 1859. The surge of energy fried telegraph wires around the world, but even more strangely, people could communicate across unpowered telegraph wires, as the electromagnetic energy released from the sun essentially powered them. Several telegraph stations disconnected their batteries after almost being fried, only to discover they could still communicate using what they dubbed the auroral current. We have since witnessed a lot of solar flares. The world was just unlucky enough in 1859 to actually be hit by one, and quite a large one at that. It's believed that if a similar event were to happen again, it would cause between $1 and $3 trillion in damages and would fry essentially all consumer electronics around the world, leaving only highly shielded systems still functioning. Next is Comet West. Named after astronomer Richard West, when Comet West passed through the inner solar system in 1976, it was quickly noted as one of the brightest celestial objects to ever pass through our solar system, even appearing as brighter than Venus and Jupiter, or bright enough to study during the daylight. But what made it even more unique is that it may never be seen again. Oh, it's on an orbit that will take it back through our solar system in about 250,000 years. Now, on predictions like that, scientists build in a little bit of wiggle room. The comet may shed some mass as it orbits, but 240,000 years is still a long time. Will humanity even make it through the next 250 years? When Comet West passed overhead, it was incredibly impressive, carving a glittering path across the sky. But unlike most once-in-a-millennia event, scientists hardly made any fuss to the public at all. This is because just a little time before West arrived, another comet, Comet Kohoutek, had been hyped up heavily by the scientific community, only to be rather disappointing when it did show up. So scientists were a little apprehensive of hyping up the public, only to disappoint the public again, resulting in most people missing one of the brightest comets ever seen in history, and one that will likely never be seen again. Next is Cyclone Catarina. Cyclone Catarina was not unique for its strength or its size, but its location. Also known as Hurricane Catarina, this was the only hurricane-level storm ever recorded in the South Atlantic. It made landfall in southern Brazil as a Category 2 hurricane and lost power rapidly, dying out 2 days later. What made it so unique was that the South Atlantic is historically known for having significantly less tropical storms than the North Atlantic and no hurricanes. This is due to several factors, a critical one being a powerful shear force wind that disrupts most cyclones before they can form into proper hurricanes. But also, the cooler waters of the South Atlantic mean there's less energy available to make a storm. However, in Catarina's case, the shear force winds were significantly lower than usual, and the sea temperature was noticeably higher than usual. These factors, along with a few other atmospheric anomalies, led to the formation of the first and so far only hurricane ever encountered in the South Atlantic. However, this may not be an anomaly for long, as rising sea temperatures will only encourage more frequent and stronger storms around the world. 1,500 homes were destroyed and more than 40,000 damaged, along with the destruction of 40% of the rice crop, in all amounting to about $350 million in damages which were incurred. Despite a successful evacuation, 3 people also lost their lives and another 75 were injured. Next is the Tunguska Event. The Tunguska Event is one of the strangest in all human history due to its devastating impact as well as its near-total mystery. At 7 a.m. June 17, 1908, several Russian villagers northwest of Lake Baikal saw a brilliant blue light as bright as the sun rip through the sky overhead, before then impacting in the distance in a brilliant explosion of fire and light. Moments later, a sound like artillery fire swept over them, along with a shockwave so massive it shattered windows, homes, and trees for hundreds of kilometers. A fire wave scorched trees near the impact site for dozens of kilometers as well, and was noted to be equivalent to a low-yield nuclear explosion. The shockwave was so powerful, it was recorded on geological monitors as far away as Jakarta and Washington, D.C. The blast kicked up so much dust, debris, and ice that the reflected light allowed people to take well-lit photos without a flashbulb at night hundreds of kilometers away in 1908. It was eventually determined the asteroid that caused the blast was some 65 meters across and was the largest asteroid to impact the Earth during recorded human history. Thankfully, this record-breaking asteroid landed in a nearly entirely uninhabited part of the planet, or else the devastation would have been severe. Next is disease eradication. Humanity has made some pretty incredible advancements, especially when it comes to healthcare and disease control. However, only once in all of human history has the eradication of a disease occurred. Smallpox had been one of humanity's greatest threats for millennia, and was even used as a biological weapon throughout history. It took a concerted effort from international health experts, teams, and organizations to inoculate the world and eradicate the disease. In 1979, it was declared that the disease had been fully eradicated, and by 1980, the World Health Assembly managed to confirm, after heavy investigation, that the disease was in fact eliminated in its entirety. This is an incredibly impressive achievement, but is somehow still an anomaly when we have the ability, if not the will, to eradicate numerous other diseases. Tuberculosis, for example, is eminently treatable and curable and could be eliminated as well, but is instead allowed to run rampant in many poor and disadvantaged communities. And finally is the dancing plague. Perhaps the strangest occurrence of mass hysteria in human history, the dancing plague happened in the village of Strasbourg in Alsace in 1518. It began when one woman, Frau Trophea, stepped outside her home and began to dance maniacally in the street. After over 2 weeks of dancing, she was then joined by others, as more and more people were seemingly infected with this need to dance. This social contagion spread to a possible 400 people by August, and they danced continuously for weeks. Initially, the authorities turned to the physicians, who encouraged those afflicted to dance it out, bringing along musicians and even strong people to hold up those too exhausted to stay standing so they could keep dancing. This, unsurprisingly, only made things worse, and soon people were dropping to the floor, exhausted to the point of coma or simply outright deceased. Some estimates say that in this time, 15 dancers a day were passing away, and yet the rest continued to dance themselves to near death. Eventually, the dancers were dragged to a temple and ordered to undergo a ritual to cleanse themselves and be forgiven by Saint Vitus, which did actually work and ended the dancing plague. Some have said this was caused by ergot poisoning, a common grain fungus that causes hallucinations among other things. However, others say it was instead a mania induced by stress due to the severely harsh year the people of Alsace had had, suffering through several famines, starvations, and war. No dancing plague has ever been recorded since. Those were unbelievable anomalies that have only been seen once. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.